you're called to be in their lives. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we have been called here today in the trial of the people versus God, in the matter of, well, is God really being God? You will be presented with witnesses from the prosecution who will be cross-examined by the defense. You've been asked to render a decision as to whether God is being God. We will now hear our opening statements.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and Your Honor, Judge J. Isis. We intend to prove to you that God is the greatest con artist of all time. Everything he has done is all a facade. The Bible is not a reliable source of what he has done. He chose who was going to write it, and skewed it to be in his favor. Since so many people starve, so many people struggle, and many people never get a miracle, obviously, God is not omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, or all-loving. We intend to prove this by using our 4 witnesses we have to showcase God's failures.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and Your Honor, Judge J. Isis, we intend to show you that though there appears to be witnesses to the contrary, the testimonies of these men and women will verify what we already know to be true, that God is God. Even though life may be difficult and prayers remain unanswered, the goodness of life seems to prove time and time again that God truly is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, and all-loving.
Prosecution, call your first witness.
We call to the stand Isaac.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please tell us your name and where you were working on July 20th, 2012.
I am Isaac, and I was a security guard at Aurora, Colorado, Century 16 Theater on July 20th, 2012, at the premiere of the Dark Knight Rises movie.
Can you please tell us the events of that night?
I had an overnight shift for the premiere of the movie. Before I started my shift, I took a moment to pray to God, to ask God to let me know if anything harmful was coming to the movie that night. Like I did every night, I started my shift, but this night became different.
How so?
In the middle of the movie, gunfire broke out in the theater. I was standing post in the hallway, and I ran in to see what was happening. I saw flashes of gunfire light and could smell smoke from tear gas. I knew in the moment that there was a shooter who was carrying all kinds of weapons and had begun shooting people at random.
And what happened when it all calmed down?
12 people died, 70 were injured, all because God failed me. God didn't tell me that there was something that was going to happen. God didn't warn me.
What do you mean God failed you?
I prayed before my shift, and God didn't tell me anything.
And why do you think that is?
I guess God didn't really know.
But here I thought that God was omniscient, which means he's supposed to know everything.
Right. And I thought God was all-knowing. But obviously God isn't. So God failed me that night. And a horrible tragedy occurred because of it.
Thank you. No further questions.
Defense, do you have any questions for the witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Isaac, thank you for coming in today, and though it may be difficult, how did it feel when God didn't answer your prayers?
I felt devastated. I felt useless. I felt like a failure because God failed his job.
What happened afterwards during that night?
I didn't know what to do. It It was total chaos in the theater. But then suddenly, a sense of peace came over me, and I knew what to do. So I ran in and got people to lay down on the ground underneath the seats. I got people to lay over each other. I called the police.
How did you know how to do that? And please, tell us about the sense of peace that came over you.
I felt God was with me.
What did you learn that night?
Maybe God doesn't always share God's wisdom with us when we think we should receive it. But when I needed it most, God came through. And because of that peace, I know what to do.
Thank you. No further questions.
Prosecution, call your next witness.
Your Honor, we call to the stand Sarah Smith.
Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Please tell us your name and where you were on June 26th, 2015.
My name is Sarah Smith, and I was in church getting married.
Congratulations, that's great. But what makes your wedding so significant? People get married all the time.
It was the first day I was legally allowed to do so.
Legally allowed?
That was the day the U.S. Supreme Court declared gay marriage legal in this country.
Wow. You must have felt that God was really with you.
Yes, I did.
But what else happened that day?
That was also the day we heard about what a group of ISIS supporters had done to a bunch of Christians.
What happened?
They were all killed because of their faith in God.
And how do you feel about that?
I feel really guilty because obviously God was with me and not with them.
Oh, so you're saying that God is not omnipresent, that God can't be everywhere at the same time?
It sure feels that way.
Thank you. No further questions.
Defense, any questions?
Yes, Your Honor.
Sarah, did you ever ask God if he was omnipresent?
Yes, but I heard nothing.
Well, tell us how you felt when you didn't get the answer.
I felt terrible. I felt like God wasn't everywhere. Maybe that by then, God was somewhere else, and not even answering my prayers for the people threatened by ISIS.
What happened after all of that?
I heard the story of the people killed. They held on to and proclaimed their faith in God right up until the end.
What did you learn from the experience?
I learned that God gave me strength to believe in what I believed was from God, and no matter what anyone said about me, I knew that I was okay with God. And I heard that those killed by the ISIS stayed strong and proclaimed their faith in God even in the moments before their death. They must have known that they were okay with God too.
How do you think they knew that?
They must have felt God with them too.
So, God is omnipresent?
Yes.
No further questions. Thank you.
Prosecution, any other witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor, we call to the stand Terry.
Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your occupation.
My name's Terry Haroon, and I'm a Chief Master Sergeant in the United States Air Force.
How did you get into that occupation?
When I was 19, my mother died after a long battle with cervical cancer. I was the oldest of a younger brother and sister by 7 and 9 years. So my dad, he still had to work, so I left my job and dropped out of school to raise my little brother and sister and really become like a mom and father to them. About 8 months later, my dad remarried to a woman that nobody liked. She was really terrible. And eventually I left home and joined the Air Force as a way to get out of the awful situation at the house. It felt like God had left our lives out of control, and despite all of our prayers, never really stepped in to help us out. And it felt like God wasn't powerful enough to help our family. People had always told me that God was omnipotent, but I seriously doubted that.
So then, how did that affect your faith?
I lost it. I was really angry and I left the church, because the church kept telling me how wonderful and how powerful God was, but when it came down to it, He didn't do anything at all for my family.
Thank you. No further questions.
Defense, would you like to cross-examine?
Yes, Your Honor. Again, Terry, thank you for coming in, but how did it feel when you didn't get the help from God you felt you had asked for?
I just told you, it was awful. It felt like God had absolutely no power at all in my life.
And what happened after it?
Well, on one of my training assignments, I met a fantastic woman, and we fell in love. And 2 weeks after meeting, we were engaged to be married, and then just 2 months later, we got married. And it's been great. We've traveled the world, we've had 4 children, and through the faith of my wife, I began to see how God was actually working in my life.
Though terrible, what did you learn from this experience?
Well, I learned actually that God was with my family all the time, working a way and a plan that I didn't exactly want or recognize, but He was there, and He was helping us through. And now I'm raising my children to know God too.
So maybe God is truly all-powerful, omnipotent.
Yes, I guess so.
Thank you. No further questions.
Prosecution, are you done yet?
No, Your Honor, we have one final witness.
Call your witness.
We call God to the stand.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you?
So, God, you're supposed to be our Father, right? And aren't fathers supposed to use all their powers and everything necessary to take care of their children? So, as you look around the room today, there's obvious that you're failing at your job. Some are thriving, and some of your children, not so much. Why is that?
I love you.
Well, it feels like you play favorites. Is that true?
I love you.
Why can't you answer? Why didn't you go and tell the security guard what he needed to know? Why didn't you let him know that someone was going to hurt all those people in the theater? Aren't you omniscient?
I love you.
Where were you when your children were being killed and while other your children were doing the killing? Aren't you able to be everywhere at once? Aren't you omnipresent?
I love you.
What happened that you let a boy's mom die? Aren't you powerful enough to save a little boy's mom? Aren't you omnipotent?
I really do love you.
Aren't you God Almighty, the creator, redeemer, sustainer of all creation? Aren't you supposed to be omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent? Didn't you love the world enough to come in your Son, Jesus Christ, that everybody would experience your love?
I love you.
So why don't you talk to me? Why aren't you there in my life? Why can't I feel you? And aren't you supposed to be all-loving? Why don't you love me?
I love you.
Prosecution, are you all right?
No further questions.
Defense, would you like to cross-examine?
We have no questions, Your Honor. We rest our case.
Then please present your closing statements.
It is evident that each witness who tried to prove to you that God was not being godlike actually discovered that God was, just in a different way or time. The movie theater guard discovered God's omniscience in knowing what to do once the tragedy began. Though he may not have had divine wisdom prior, he did get divine wisdom which saved a lot of lives. The woman who finally was able to legally marry found her faith deepened even by the death of those people of faith at the hand of terrorists. And a father found a way to see God's power through the love of his wife and family. And then we heard from God. And though the answer is short and repetitive, somehow that answer, I love you, helped us to see that God is indeed omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, and all-loving.
As you can see, God not only fails one criteria of being God, he fails all the criteria of being God. Omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, and especially all-loving. We cannot let God continue to deceive people, giving them false hope just to have it taken away in remarkably cruel ways. All of these people have been hurt, and it's because of their dependence on a God that just could not deliver.
Thank you to the prosecution and the defense. Thank you to our witnesses. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we will release you now to deliberate and make your decision. Is God being God? I'll give you a week until next Sunday to think, pray, and make your decision. Think carefully. Your decision is one many have asked for generations. You will speak on behalf of people around the world, throughout history, and you will speak to people who live today and may live in the future. We ask for your honest deliberations. Good luck.
Please join me in prayer.